So perhaps the momentum built in the St. Louis series hasn't translated for game one. Maybe it can still translate. Everybody has off games. That would be the final as well. 5-1 Tampa Bay wins. We can talk about that game, of course, but I also want to talk about the idea of Texas having desirable trade deadline talent. So we got a couple of different ways that we can go here, but also from the 972, Kevin, my fiance and I are both Tolos. We're getting married next year. You are more than welcome to show up and profess your love to one of us or both of us and attempt to interrupt the service.
I almost did that at Kevin's wedding. I really, if they would have let me,
awesome.
If they would have let me in the doors.
Tell them why you didn't get in the doors.
I was 5 minutes late.
You had to know at my wedding it was going to.
I was standing next to Jess, and I was like, all right, she'll go in. I'll walk in behind her. And they were like, nope. And I was like, ah, crap. But I wanted to do that. I wanted to stand up, but I was like, man, actually, I should have just been pounding on the door from the outside.
That would have been awesome because you have to open the door. Jess told me also she thought about getting one of her friends or hiring somebody to profess their love. And
so good.
I would have loved it. Because think about it. Over the course of your life, you will go to so many freaking weddings. And you're like, oh, yeah, that was Steve's wedding or Jared's wedding or whatever. And some of them will blend together. But you're like, oh, man, I was at Jenny's wedding.
Can you believe what happened?
This dude busts in. He was like, I still love you. You'll never forget that wedding.
You're right.
But alas, didn't happen in my wedding.
And not very many people have stories like that.
For sure. Man, I wonder how many people have a story of, so I ran off with that person, and then we got married.
Yeah.
And then my original fiance tried to interrupt that wedding, and I was like, no dice.
I actually didn't know who the person was that was professing their love. They just showed up. I thought they were attractive. They looked like they had some money, so I felt, you know what?
Either that or you'd walked up to the aisle and you had your regrets. And you're like, I just need a distraction to get me out of this. And then some guy shows up and you're like, works for me. All right. So the Rangers score one run. The offense is pretty much non-existent most of the night because they scored that run late in the game. I think it was in the 7th when the game essentially felt like it was over. Do you look at this one game and immediately fear, okay, we're back to usual? Or are you like, okay, let me wait to see how the rest of the series plays out and see if we can actually have some offensive momentum?
I do kind of wonder how much the rain delay may have affected some things last night. It didn't affect Tampa, but I do kind of have that question of, did that lose steam? What is it these guys get motivated by? Like, I don't know what keeps them locked in because they don't look locked in.
Yeah.
So, no, Kevin, I did feel like, oh, man, we stink again. Like, that was what my brain was telling me last night and this morning. So I want to believe that there's some other level they can get to. I want to believe that there's some other place that they can turn a switch on for. But man, this has been too long. Not just this season, but going back to last year too. This has been too long of a time to believe that something's just going to magically happen.
And with that in mind, look, we talked about this, I think, last week about how people who want the Rangers to move on, the Rangers to make some trades, I think you're going to have to wait for at least a month and maybe a month and a half before you really see particularly much traction there at all. But if you were inclined,
which is interesting because Chris Young is impatient.
Yes,
he is impatient. So I wonder if maybe he's like, nah, screw it. We got to get going now.
See, and I think that's going to work in the opposite way that some Rangers fans desire. I think if it happens like that, it's going to be to acquire somebody. Look, there is no part of me, and if you feel this way and you're like, hey, I don't think the Rangers can turn it around. I know they're just 4.5 out and you still have 101 games to go. But if you don't think the Rangers offense is going to be able to turn it around at any point, even when they're healthy, and what you're hoping for is them to unload people, I think that's significantly less likely in the next month and a half than Chris Young being like, here's another move we need to make to contend. Because there's no way they are ready to concede this season like some Rangers fans are. I'm not either.
I'm not even close. Because, and again, what are the standings, Kevin, right now?
We're 4.5 back.
And that was how you were 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that like you are playing in a division that is pretty mediocre and packed together. Because if you were in either one of the other AL divisions, you'd be like, all right, so your best shot probably is wild card.
That's true. By the way, I've gotten multiple messages from people on Facebook and Twitter letting me know they had the Pico de Gallo burger from Whataburger yesterday for lunch or for dinner, and that it was phenomenal. So thank you to the Tolos that were listening and got a burger.
Very nice. Look at you doing work across the board.
Love
so
food.
Here's a side question before we get into the trade, and maybe this is a question for another day. From the 817, because you see this text all the time, so do I. This current team makes me question if the World Series championship was a fluke.
Okay.
Let's say it was.
Never had one before, though. So I don't care if it was a fluke or not.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. Like, I'm disappointed that we weren't good in 2024, and the struggle has been on to be good in 2025, right? It does not change my feelings about the 2023 World Series run whatsoever.
Yeah.
You proved in emphatic fashion that you were the best team in baseball for that run. It was a hell of a season. The first half of the season was just freaking tremendous, or at least the first 60 games. To me, it doesn't change my feelings about that season at all, but maybe it does for other people. It is hard for me to argue against that. Look, we talked about going into 2023, the Rangers had the longest consecutive losing streaks of seasons at any point in the history of the franchise, but it will never change how I feel about that season.
The 682, I wish the Cowboys would have a fluke season and win another Super Bowl. Like, I think that fluke season would be everything for us. But yeah, no, the Rangers, like, that's the first one we ever won. So that doesn't, I don't care how you got there that year and how that happened. Now, did I expect that you were going to be there that year? No. So I will admit, we didn't think that going into that season. We thought we're still a couple years, a year or two away from all the thing being built correctly. All of a sudden, Boch walks in and everybody's inspired and playing in a different way. Did that wear off? Or was that just as Mike has said many times, career years for those guys?
That's probably
and all of them pretty much did have career years, and then they came back to earth.
Yeah.
And Boch got them to play better that 1 year. So what can you do now? Do you flip roster over and get Boch to do the same thing with a new bunch because he can inspire them? Or do you stay steady with this? Because it does feel like Boch believes the work, if I just keep at it, it's eventually going to fix itself.
So I think the other thing that they're factoring in addition to that, because obviously I agree with that, look at your lineup right now. Or look at the lineup that you put out last night. All right, Josh Smith, Wyatt Langford, he's missed some time. He's there. Corey Seager, obviously he's missed time. Same with Josh Young. They're both there. We moved Osuna up, but you also saw some from Adolis Garcia. Marcus Semien, Jake Berger, you sent him down to the minors and brought him back. And Evan Carter, you saw a little bit from him. Obviously, he has missed some time as well. Now, and then you've got Higgy there. That missing time for the catcher position hasn't been as problematic. But my point is, whether it's Langford, Seager, Young, Garcia, Berger, Carter, either you bench them or send them down to the minors, or they have had injuries, but that's happened to all of them. They're all here now. So what I would love to see is for them to stay healthy for, let's even say, like 3 to 4 weeks, because then that excuse is out the window. Because you even heard Brett Boone earlier, and he goes, hey, we just need our guys to stay healthy. All right, they're here now, and you did nothing offensively yesterday. But that happens to the best of the teams. Mm-hmm. So what's it going to look like in the next 3 weeks if those guys stay relatively in the line?
Yeah, and I think that's what, doesn't that feel like that's what Boone's saying?
Yes.
I know they're here now today.
Yeah.
But tomorrow, the way this season has gone, tomorrow one of them will be out.
Yeah.
Or two of them. And so the hope is that after 3 weeks, they find a groove in the same order. And like that is kind of a hope. I know that I can be protected by this guy at the plate. I know I can be protected by this guy in the lineup too. This allows me to get these types of pitches because the information will start pouring in.
Yep.
If you have the same thing over and over consistently over a period of time, the information on how do they treat these guys and what's the trends. Because, Kevin, you can't pick up a trend for your data, at least, if there is no real consistency. You have to have consistency to have trends.
Yeah.
So I think that's the one thing that they're hoping is the difference, not just a guy walks in and says, I'm here to hit home runs. Good luck.
Now,
although that would be nice.
Yeah, I mean,
Kevin, if we could just find somebody to walk in and say, I'm here to hit home runs. Good luck.
Okay.
And then does it, I will trade for him.
Okay. Oh, I like that.
Thank you.
Now, Jeff Passan, I believe it's Jeff Passan, put out thoughts about who could be the most desirable tradable assets, because this is one of the things that we run into. When people say Marcus Semien and Jock Peterson, all right, well, first of all, Jock Peterson is hurt right now. He hadn't played particularly well, even though I know it looked like he was picking it up prior to his injury. What's that trade going to be worth? For people that want to DFA him, probably not a lot. Marcus Semien, people are frustrated.
Young arm.
Yeah, maybe
high A ball.
if you eat some of that money. Same thing with Marcus Semien. So I wanted to focus in on kind of where Passan was going, was Mahle, Patrick Corbin, Chris Martin, and Hobie Milner. Obviously, we've discussed this. Relievers can be cheaper. And then in kind of rental players like Tyler Mahle and Patrick Corbin, sometimes teams are more willing to go in on those players because they're like, I don't have to stick with a financial commitment after this year.
I am kind of interested, though, Kevin, because those things give you bigger return, right?
Yeah.
But man, I'm trying to come up with the right name. Deshaun Stevenson was a small thing thrown into the conversation for the Mavericks in that 11 season. And it turns out like we had a lot of reliance on he's going to be the LeBron stopper. Was he? No. It was actually Jason Terry running him all over the place. But he added some toughness. Jankowski, like if you were to trade Peterson for Jankowski, I mean, this is just a name that I'm throwing in there. That doesn't move the needle really for anybody. Because nobody knows, like, we all know Jankowski, but nobody knows Jankowski until he got here.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden he gets here and he does things right. And you're like, oh, hold on. Why wasn't he doing that there? We don't know. But this guy wasn't doing it here. And maybe you can make one of those trades that you get better production out of somebody, but it's not a star. So I think that's a move in addition to another move that can get you something significant. It would be unfortunate to have to move on from Mahle. It would be rough because he's pitching so well. But if you're trying to get something that you need over something that you have a plethora of, then that's where you have to have that real conversation. But maybe there are other players on this team that other teams are interested in, and it wouldn't cost us Mahle.